So I don't have much experience with the river in the winter, but apparently there's some pretty serious ice breakup currently. And it's leaving these huge patches of shattered bits of ice and snow all along the bank, which is a bit difficult to traverse. So I came out here and put my crayfish traps on. There's a point, a piece of driftwood under here that I have a rope attached to, that I normally throw from. I attach and throw them into the river from there, but it's under about probably about a good 3 or 4 feet of just chunks of ice. So I grabbed a couple of these chunks of wood and I'm just gonna slam them into one of these chunks of snow and ice and hope they stay there until I can come retrieve the traps tomorrow. It's a bit of a risk because if the river rises and carries this away, or this falls in the river, melts, something like that, I lose the traps. But I can always order more, so I'm gonna do it anyway. All right, so these are possibly some of the worst conditions you can deal with when you're putting out crayfish traps like I am. So for one, I have no attachment points here, so I just attach it to a piece of ice because that's a lot more solid than it looks, and even slamming with these chunks of wood with a rock just doesn't drive them in. There's a very fast current going through here because it's hitting that corner over there, going around that, and just going straight down this way. You really want to try putting in those eddies if you can, but I can't access that area right now due to the large amounts of ice. This rocky bottom is good for crayfish, but sometimes the ropes of the traps get stuck under the rocks and you just have to cut them loose, which obviously leads to you losing the trap. So it's really just not a good place to put them. It's not good conditions for it. As you can see, the current's still pulling them, even though I put rocks in the bottom of them to try to hold them down. So I'm concerned I may lose this. So I'm gonna try to rig something up to kind of wedge it. So I've just wrapped it around these couple sticks, and the rope is pulling them into these 2 chunks of ice. So it's not great. If a big enough chunk of ice comes along and catches that rope, it's gonna get lost. I also don't have quite enough bait for what I would want, and the strong current's gonna take the sardines I am using and probably just pull them right through the sides of the trap because they're so mushy. As you can see, the rope's straight out. So I don't have too high hopes for this, but you know what they say, no risk, no reward. Speaking of large sheets of ice, that's what we got going by right now. So we might lose it already, and it hasn't even been 3 minutes. Yeah. I don't know, maybe not. It looks like it's kind of bouncing around. You can see that whole sheet right there flowed from somewhere down the river. It's like a whole floating island. I'm gonna say it's safe because of the way it bounced. It hit that stuff there and kind of bounced it away. But even if it isn't, if it pulls it, there's nothing I can do about it anyway. It's just gone. So I'm just gonna pretend it didn't happen. Now, down here is a place I would usually go. There's a small little sand beach. As you can see, the river has rose quite substantially, as well as receded. So this is what we're looking at now. Just a ton of ice and some frozen water over there. I would not walk on that as it appears to be quite thin. As you can see, there's a little ice overhang over there, so I wouldn't even recommend walking on all this stuff because you might fall through. I'm gonna head to that bank all the way over there. I don't know if you can see it, but that one over there. Now this here is a pretty good sign of beaver activity, as you can see all down this hill. There's bits of trees and shrubs that have been chewed off like this. So beaver are coming up from the river and chewing those down and bringing them into the river. What they're doing with them, I don't know, because there's no way they're going to dam up the Connecticut. They might just be taking them for food. Which a lot of people think beavers actually eat wood. They don't. They eat the bark and the cambium on the outside of the branches in the tree. That's where all the nutrition is. And they let go of the sticks, peeled and stuff, and they just float down the river or wherever they are. You often find them along the banks here. They seem to really like alder. They really like that for some reason. I don't know. I don't like it. Really bad for smoking and food and stuff like that. It just gives it a really acrid taste. Some people use it. I don't prefer it, but teach them. This here is a lot more recent. I can tell because the wood's still fairly white. The tree's still up. So these chunks here. They take little chunks out of whatever they're cutting down. This here is a box elder. They're pretty common along the river's edge, open spaces like that. They have seeds that look similar to maples. Just one second, let me see if I can show you that. Here. You can see the seeds look pretty similar to maples. Not quite the same, they're a bit longer. So there's a lot of beaver sound around here. This was all a bunch of staghorn sumac, like what you see there. And they've come up here and they've cut it all down. And why are they eating sumac? I don't know. It seems different beavers in different areas have different preferences. Just like humans. As you can see, this is where they're coming up. They come up right through the river there. I'm not seeing any tracks in the snow. So they may not have been up super recently. But that's where they're coming up. They come right up these banks here, which is kind of crazy considering they spend most of their time in the water. And even me, something that spends most of its time on land, has trouble scaling banks like this. They just come up here, cut the trees down, and drag them down to the river. So I'm not going to be able to show you what I wanted to today. I came out here looking for ground nut, which usually is quite a bit of it along these banks. The problem is I can't access the banks because they're covered in about 3 or 4 feet of ice and snow, which isn't ideal, but I guess I'll go look around and look for something else to show you. We'll see what I can find. So, like I said, I'm not going to be able to show you what I wanted to today, probably. I mean, I probably could scour these banks and maybe fall in the river looking for it. Maybe I find it, maybe I don't. So instead, I'm just sitting up here looking into the river, trying to pick out anything that might be of use to me later. Like that grass there. That could be good habitat for, oh, look, a duck. Look at him go. Could be good habitat for fish. They like living in that. I've noticed that a lot of smaller fish, when the river rises, will actually hide in the flooded grass. So that could be useful later if I'm looking to try some fishing in this area. You see this here? How this ice is spinning in circles? So there's a little inlet here. This would have been a better place to put the crayfish traps. Unfortunately, I'm afraid about people stealing them. Also, I don't know what's down there. It could get ripped open over on a rock or a sharp piece of metal, anything like that. But it definitely would have been a better place than where I put them. Also, I don't know how I'd get down there without ending up in the river. This is groundnut. It's a little potato-like tuber. You usually find them in strings. This one probably ended up here when the river rose and it got washed up here. But they're kind of like a little wild potato. You find them all along riverbanks. They generally like places that are more open and sunny. They don't mind sandy soil, but it has to have some soil in it. It can't be all sand. I eat these a lot. I generally prefer them to be either raw or boiled. You can roast them. They're just pretty starchy and dry if you do that. But yeah, groundnut. It's a good source of carbs. And they're plentiful in the winter, which most plants aren't. So, now this here is a plant called mullein. Unfortunately, right now, for me teaching you ID, it's going to be a bit hard. I'll probably redo it in the spring. But the stem on this is often used for hand drills. And the seeds, a fun fact about the seeds is when you crush them up, if you put them in a small enough body of water, they actually paralyze fish, which is completely illegal, so probably don't do it. Probably. But yeah, it's pretty interesting. This is a new stretch of riverbank for me. I've never been this far over. And I want to go down there to look around. But it's a pretty steep drop. If it was not frozen ground, I wouldn't be worried about it. I could slow myself. But with frozen ground, you generally just slide across it. So it's not exactly ideal. This probably fell down from up here and ripped out a good chunk of the bank with it. I'm going to try to figure a way down there, and I'll let you know when I do.